I'm Peter Marks, and I'm no longer a theater critic for either the Washington Post or the New York Times.
And I'm Elizabeth Vincenteli, still a theater critic.
Yay.
For how long? Who knows? And I write for the New York Times about theater and skiing and TV and zombies and other really important topics. We're back with you for another episode of Marks and Vincenteli, which is very creatively named after our names. Theater is our jam. What can I say? That's what we do.
Yes, it's our jam and also our multi-grain toast.
Oh, no. This is so bad. Okay, I think the dad jokes, as I think we've established on this podcast that dad jokes have no gender.
Oh, for God's sake.
They can come from you. They can come from me. By the way, okay, no, actually, I'll tell you because I just heard a very good joke this weekend, and it took me the third time it was told is when I finally got it.
Uh-oh.
So, but I will mention it in due time.
Yeah, I don't think you've ever told a joke before, Elizabeth. At least not on here. What's the joke?
Okay, so this weekend, as you may know, because I was texting you, even though I had officially no reception, I was at camping and kayaking. And every morning we had a safety talk. And one of the safety talks was be careful with your paddle. You don't want to hit someone over the head with it or the face. Fine. And to illustrate that, the guide would say, well, you don't want to get what we call summer teeth. Some are in the boat, some are in the water, some are still in your mouth. It took me 3 times. The third day, because they were saying the speech every day, the third day I started laughing. I was just like, I finally got the summer teeth joke. Anyway, that's so sad.
Okay, well, maybe we should tell people what this episode's about.
I know, right? This episode it's very, well, first of all, it's special because it's about Hamlet, which is maybe not everybody's favorite play, but you may have heard of it. It's pretty famous. And there's a new adaptation by our guest, Jeremy McCarter, who has assembled like a kind of great team of great actors. And the idea is to tell the story through the Prince of Denmark's voice and ears and mind's eye. You're really in his head.
All from Hamlet's perspective. It's an audio production, and all Shakespeare's words, of course, and best absorbed with headphones, because you hear all the sound effects and dialogue from Hamlet's own perspective. The first time, apparently, this has ever been done.
Yeah, it's really stunning. I mean, I was listening to it when I was walking around, and the effects or the production, that technically speaking, is very impressive. Now, I'm not entirely sure that Hamlet is the kind of character I would personally want to get into his head. It's not always fun in there, but it's definitely a really kind of weird ride. Really weird. It's really spooky at times too, which is appropriate. And Jeremy, I think most people and many of our listeners would know him as the author of the best-selling Hamilton: The Revolution, which is the official Hamilton book that he did with Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah. Well, he worked at the Public at the time. I believe that Hamilton was birthed at the Public. So I think his relationship with Lin-Manuel emanates from that. And now we're happy to have Jeremy solo on our show.
So Jeremy, welcome to the podcast. And okay, let's explain to us exactly the premise, the concept for Make-Believe Association and this rather unusual, in many ways, Hamlet.
Many, many ways. I'm happy to. So the company first, Make-Believe Association, I moved to Chicago about 10 years ago, and I responded powerfully to the vibe that you get when you move to Chicago, which is the city says, well, what are you going to make? I had just spent 5 years on the artistic staff of the Public Theater. And so I was interested in continuing to be involved in making projects somehow. And I've always loved old radio plays. I just think it's a really powerful, vivid way of telling stories. It doesn't feel different from theater, if you ask me. It's like theater, but more so, because it's making you use your imagination even more actively than, kitchen sink dramas do, for example. So in 2017, I started this nonprofit. We were focused on making things for people to listen to on podcasts, audio dramas, which are like radio plays. I knew no one in Chicago when I had this idea, so had to find collaborators and donors and everything else. But 8 years later, here we are.
Wow.
And mostly what we've done is original work to showcase Chicago artists and Chicago voices, as you both know, but I think lots of people don't. The depth of acting talent in the city is phenomenal. And so part of why I wanted to start this company is to create a platform for those artists. And this one, this new project is definitely is a little bit left field for us, but it came from a very specific, in retrospect, obvious sounding insight, which is that if you wear headphones when you listen to an audio drama, which is what most people do, the stage is inside your head. The voices are not coming from a stage. They're not coming from a screen. They're coming from the same places where you talk to yourself. That is an unbelievable superpower that audio drama has that no other art form quite can match. And so having this late night observation, I thought, well, if we have this superpower, then what should we do with it? What would be the story? If we can go inside some character's head, who is the most interesting head to go inside? And it took a second to know, well, that's Hamlet. It's got to be Hamlet. And so I hit the books to figure out, can you even tell the story of Hamlet if you're telling it entirely from his point of view, where you never leave his head? What you're hearing is what he's hearing, both inside his head and outside. And now Hamlet has just been released to the wild.
But it's also, I mean, did you never thought about doing, because there are like audio versions of Hamlet, but they're doing the play. So it goes on for like however long,
Sure. My closest artistic collaborator on Make Believe is the sound designer, Mikhail Fixel. He's done a few Broadway shows at this point. He won the Tony Award for Dana H.
Oh, great.
With Didi O'Connell. He is very, very good at his job. And when we talk about these projects, we often use film terms. It somehow comes more naturally than talking in theatrical terms. And I think, Elizabeth, what you're noticing is that there are lots of audio Hamlets, but they're basically audio Hamlets where someone has pointed the camera at the stage and you're getting one shot,
right,
and the camera never moves. It's like one of those Lincoln Center archival videos. They're valid. They're useful. I have enjoyed a lot of them. That's not what we were about here. What we wanted to do here is do something that would be much more subjective, really lean into what this medium and only this medium can do.
So, and what that really entails, having listened to your excellent Hamlet, really intriguing version of the play, it's all Shakespeare's words, but you've basically vacuumed out the scenes that Hamlet's not in, and you've added some ideas of what's going on, what's raging inside his skull as all of this transpires.
That's right.
Is that a fair assessment?
That's fair. The phrase that we came up with to describe this approach is radically faithful. I promised at the very beginning I was not going to rewrite Shakespeare. I wasn't going to add any words that weren't already there in the folio or one of the quarto versions. Like, wasn't going to have it. Also, I'd just seen Fat Ham, which I thought was phenomenal. And I just felt like I'm definitely don't want to do anything that puts like this project in comparison with what James did so masterfully with that. With this, so the challenge was if the premise is we are giving you Hamlet's perspective on his own story, does it even? The first question was, can you even tell the story that way? Does it even make sense? Does the plot cohere? And we figured out mostly yes, occasionally no. There are some moments that something essential to the plot happens off stage. So then what do you do? And luckily, there was just enough raw material in the way that people on stage describe those events that I could gently turn those moments in, reconstruct those moments as if they were happening on stage. I try to do it very faithfully to what happened. It didn't change the nature of, for example, when he goes to Ophelia's chamber, Ophelia later describes it to Polonius, what had happened. Or his pirate adventure. Hamlet describes it himself. He writes the letter and so all I did was have Hamlet write the letter, and you can hear him doing it in real time as you preserve the integrity of what you're trying to do. So there's that. And then the other layer, the fun part is then, if we're saying that you are inside Hamlet's head as he's going through all these things, he's not having like a normal day at the office. There's a lot of highly emotionally charged things happening around him. Daniel Kyrie, incredible actor that played Hamlet, he and I had a lot of conversations when we were starting out. What is the story we're telling? Is Hamlet pretending that he's crazy, or is he actually losing his marbles? And Daniel just felt like this is real. He's really going insane. Once you commit to telling that story, then what is the experience of someone who is paranoid, losing their grip on reality, racked with grief, fearful of the future? How do you convey that? And that's figuring those, answering those questions took a year. Post-production for this was a year. Recording was like 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. And then it took a year to edit and design the thing because we felt like we wanted to try to do it justice.
But going insane, and yet at the same time perceiving what's been going on in court and what was done to in the usurpation of the throne. I mean, so it's not as if he's fantasizing what has transpired and how he reacts to it. And I think what I thought was so clarifying right off the bat, Jeremy, in this production, I've often seen the ghost of Hamlet's father very placidly or, sort of, spectrally talking to Hamlet and giving him a warning and setting the action going. In this case, the ghost is so emotional, played by John Douglas Thompson, I believe.
Yep, that's him.
He so fires his son up. You feel, to me, it felt like he was penetrating Hamlet's consciousness, and whether he existed or not, his state of being was so on edge, so heightened, that you understood that Hamlet was being driven towards something that would, be so hyper actively affecting how he responded. It felt like that impetus was very, very clear.
That's great to hear. I mean, it helps that John is maybe the greatest Shakespearean actor alive, and listening to him do the ghost scene opposite Daniel was like a total delight. That was like a great, great day. One of the things I'm grateful for about this experience is the kinds of questions that it forces you to solve when you're doing it this way. The biggest one being, we know that Hamlet has some transformation after his pirate adventure. He comes back, he turns into the person who can say the readiness is all. When you're doing it this way and you're inside his head, you can't just let the audience figure out that must happen sometime when he's off stage. We sort of have, so that's like the big one at the end. But what you're talking about with the ghost is, well, what do we know about the ghost? Or what do we know about this kingdom? That we know that the old king, Hamlet's father, his way of taking care of business was to go out and kill his enemies in single combat. That's who that guy was. The new king, Claudius, is smoother. He is more politic. He uses diplomacy to get at the same thing. So I found that contrast really interesting. And I just thought, well, if you have this military figure who's coming back and he is saying to his bookish scholar son, I'm going to need you to kill your uncle now, son. Is that going to be delivered gently, or is he going to lean into it? There's even and the way John delivered it, I actually heard this line. I've never heard it this way before, but he gets Hamlet he knows he gets Hamlet's attention, the ghost does. And at one point he says, I find thee apt. And it just helped me understand that the ghost really is making sure that he's got his attention and that he can trust this kid to do what needs to be done. And then from Hamlet's point of view, the big question about all of this is, do you understand Hamlet's character differently if you experience things the way he does, if you only learn things the way he learns them? In the play, there's the dramatic irony. You know the ghost is coming before Hamlet does. Here, you don't learn anything before Hamlet does. That's kind of the point. So if this is your introduction to the ghost, it's terrifying. And it would so unsettle him, I think, that it does some damage that you will hear for the rest of the series. This is what I mean, the radically faithful. It's like, it's exactly Shakespeare's story. We didn't change the story at all, but we do have to figure out how we're going to tell it on these terms.
One thing I was thinking as you were talking, you do say that you came out of this thinking entirely differently about Hamlet than when you started.
Definitely.
And what changed for you?
I kind of feel like it's a spoiler, even though it's just what anyone's interpretation could be. Have you made it to the end yet, Peter?
Yes.
Because, okay. Do you feel like this is Hamlet as you've seen it before or heard it? Or does it change something in the way you perceive it?
Elizabeth want to answer that?
I was going to say, for me, there's no one Hamlet. It's been done so many times that there's so many different versions of it that I never feel, okay, this is the right reading of it, because you can have very, very different readings, interpretations that are still very much faithful. Like one of my favorite ones actually is the movie with Ethan Hawke. You know, the Michael Miranda he's a filmmaker in New York, and that's one of my favorite ones. But
he does, you know,
is it more faithful? Yeah, in the blockbuster, right?
In the blockbuster, yeah.
Right.
Ethan Hawke doing To Be or Not to Be in a blockbuster is the most 90s sentence ever spoken.
It really is. It captured a whole era. But, is it more faithful or less? Or, it's just different. So
for me, what changed, one of the things that changed for me was I never thought of Hamlet as a control freak before. The degree to which, and it starts with the ghost. I never heard this the same way either. When he talks, when he recounts what has happened, and he tells his friends, do not tell anybody anything about what happened out here. And I'm thinking, well, why? Why is he so secretive about it? He wants to control the narrative. And it goes all the way through to the end of the play when he tells Horatio to tell his story. It's all, embedded in your version is that notion, always from the beginning, that this is a manipulative guy. I mean, and he's a prince. This is the world he's used to being listened to. And I never thought of the nuances of his of how his mind was thinking this through. And with a few monkey wrenches thrown in that he didn't expect, Polonius behind the arras and other things that sort of like, that that Shakespeare throws in his path. But to me, there was a level of neurosis in Hamlet that I never really had touched as closely as it's brought out in Daniel Kyrie's performance and the way that the story is told this time.
Right. So I had not thought of it in those terms, that he's sort of directing what's going on around him. But
even to the point of the play within a play, he gets such pleasure out of manipulating that situation. It comes by accident. He doesn't bring the players to Elsinore, but even that, there's elements of playmaking, and Shakespeare seems to be talking about, the controlling nature of playmaking.
Right. I love that. So what I picked up is this idea stated at the beginning of Olivier's film that he is a man. It's the tragedy of a man who can't make up his mind. I don't feel that the same way after this. I think what you realize is if you take away all of the scenes where everyone else in the play is standing around speculating about what he's going to do, you realize when he is on stage, he's acting. He's actually doing things. And this main thing that he's doing, it seems to me, is asking questions. There are these scenes where he just goes in on somebody. When Horatio and Marcellus tell him the story, pale or red, like he wants to know everything there is to know about it. When he meets the captain, the Norwegian captain, question after question. When he meets the gravedigger, well, how long does it take for a body to rot? And what? His curiosity is relentless. And I think, to me, the big change for me is it plays much more like a coming of age story than a tragedy, if you ask me. They always say this, right? With his with Shakespeare's marriage comedies, that if you you need to pick exactly the right moment for them to stop when they're comedies. And if you go like one scene farther, they might turn into tragedies. That's now how I think about Hamlet. I mean, he's this, you are in his head at the beginning, so you know that he's a mess. Grief-stricken, afraid of the future, afraid of what's after death, paralyzed by it, paranoid, lonely, isolated. And in our version anyway, about 2 hours of performance time later, he can sit there quietly with his friend and say, if I don't die today, I'm going to die later. If I don't die later, it's going to be today. The readiness is all. Where does that come from? How does he do that? I think my take on it, again, and I had never quite thought of it in these terms, is that Shakespeare used this creaky old revenge tragedy to tell the story of this character going through 17 kinds of hell and somehow arriving at a kind of peace in the midst of all of it. And then, unfortunately, that, so there's a scene to go and he dies and everybody dies and it's terrible. But that's, to me, like the story with the capital S of Hamlet, as I listen to Daniel's performance doing it and being inside his head as it happens, that's what I take away from it. It's much more about that journey. And I guess anticlimax, when I think about it, is a fair description of like the gory, everybody's guts all over the palace floor in that last scene.
Yeah, that's quite a coming of age.
Well,
Right.
but practically speaking, how were they recording? Was everybody together or kind of remote, and then patched together? Like how did it work?
Sure, it was a mix. With our Chicago cast, we had people together at Tightrope Recording, which is a studio here in town. Mikhail Fixel, being a kind of mad scientist audio whiz, designed his own microphone rigs for Daniel to wear. So because it's recorded binaurally, Daniel had microphones in earpieces.
Oh.
So when he was acting opposite Ophelia, Ayanna Bria Bakari, who played Ophelia, or Eric Hellman and Lorenzo Rush Jr., who played Horatio and Marcellus, it was like a motion capture session for film where we blocked it so that if it feels, when you listen to it, that the other characters are moving relative to your ears, it's because they were moving relative to Daniel's ears when we were recording it. Now, we couldn't do that in every case. Sharon Washington, who's incredible as Gertrude, she was in New York. John Douglas Thompson, Anna Devere Smith, they were in New York. We had them record their performances there, also on an unusually high number of microphones, and then use the magic of post-production to stitch them together. Hopefully, when you're listening to it, there's no way to tell who was in the room with Daniel and who was 700 miles away.
Oh, yeah, no, it's really impossible. But at the same time, I mean, do you feel also that there's such more of, I think, an interest in audio work? I mean, we all know that like Audible, for instance, have been having quite great success with their theater programming. And they're taking it to a whole different level because they're doing live shows that then they're bringing to their platform. Do you think that pushing the audio side of theater is making the audiences think differently about theater in a way that, like, it's kind of, reorienting or the kind of stuff that we put first, maybe?
I don't know how the audience is responding to it, but I would say to my fellow theater makers, make more audio. It's a really satisfying way to tell stories. I think it challenges your storytelling capacities in really fascinating ways. And once you lean into the specific strengths of this art form, it's as though you are doing site-specific work, but the site is inside your audience member's head. I think there's a richness and a sophistication to the storytelling that Orson Welles and folks like that were doing back in the 30s that we're still sort of rediscovering. And, at the same time that he was doing those astonishing, Mercury Theater on the air productions, he was also revolutionizing the way like Shakespeare was being done in 3 dimensions on stage. So to me, they're kindred art forms. And I would be so happy to see every theater in the country have a full-blown audio stage, so to speak.
I wanted to go back a little bit to the production itself and something you said, Jeremy, about Hamlet in counterpoint to the other characters. In a weird way, I thought this had broadened the play and my understanding of it, as opposed to narrowing it just by following Hamlet all the way through. One of the things I did notice was the passivity of all the other characters, especially Claudius and Gertrude. They're either seen as attendees at a play, or Claudius in prayer, and to me also the character who became larger to me, even though his main scene, the scene that he's most famous for, is the to thine own self be true scene, is Polonius. He becomes kind of the character we hear most in terms of reacting most, to use your word, radically to what Hamlet is doing. He's constantly befuddled, bewildered by what Hamlet is doing. He seems to me to be, in a weird way, even more active in this version, up until the time that, no spoiler here, Hamlet stabs him through the curtain.
Right.
And that was fascinating to me. And it again led me to feel like Hamlet was the master of manipulating the people of this court. It was like, it's like Hamlet in charge. That's sort of my sense of this play suddenly. And I didn't think of him as crazy. That was not what I felt. That might have been what Daniel felt, but I felt more that he was tortured by and driven by the pain he imagined his father was expressing. I'm not even quite sure in this version if I believe that the ghost is real.
I love that.
Yeah, I just don't know that's not part of what you're saying. It's all in Hamlet's head.
Sure. I mean, Polonius being the kind of cat's paw of them. I mean, it's interesting what you say. The way I thought about Claudius is that he is a much savvier politician than his late brother. And even when we talked about how to visualize this, around the studio, we hung up pictures of Kronborg Castle, which is the castle that's in Denmark now, on the spot of an earlier Kronborg Castle that we know the Lord Chamberlain's men had visited. So Shakespeare was aware of this.
I've been there.
Oh, okay. So we should have had you with us in the studio. You could have talked us through these giant photos we had around. But we wanted to have a consistent. Was that Elsinore? No. But it could have been, Elsinore could have been a place like this place, and it was useful to us to have a consistent frame of reference. And I thought of the castle when it was under the old king as being like a military fortress, and the castle under the new king as being a palace. Lots more color, light. The general is gone. Now we can celebrate. It's potentially a happy marriage. And I think, Peter, what's interesting is we know what happens in the last scene and how Claudius has laid a trap on top of a trap to get Hamlet. So what you've just said about Claudius's seeming passivity is actually a testament to how skillful a politician he is.
Makes sense.
Because from Hamlet's point of view, you really don't know what Claudius is up to. You speculate. He certainly doesn't trust Claudius, but that's how good the guy is that you can be Hamlet and not even know the snares that you're walking into, except for feckless Polonius, who keeps, bumbling into earshot.
I'm sorry, I'm so practically minded, but how did you gather the cast? It's a fantastic cast. How did you have like a dream list, or did you? And also, how did the cast kind of influence? Or did you already have like a very set idea of like the direction and the tone you wanted to have, or did you have some back and forth with the actors, and how did they weigh in on the material?
Sure. The cast, this is a dream cast. I mean, I felt from the beginning, I wanted it to be a mix of my favorite Chicago actors, a lot of whom have been in make-believe productions. I mean, Daniel this is his fourth time, our fourth time working together, all the way back to 2017. So I knew I wanted this core of Chicago artists. And then one of the ways that I felt that we could showcase how great these actors are is to put them on a virtual stage with the most acclaimed Shakespearean actors alive. And so we were really blessed to get John Douglas Thompson and Sharon Washington, these sort of giants of Shakespearean performance. And and hear them play together. And what you just said about Polonius, I think, Peter, one of the reasons why he makes such an impression is because it's, Jacob Ming Trent, who is an incredible actor, and gets everything there is to get in those scenes, the Polonius scenes. And so hearing that dynamic, I'm trying to think if there's any specific thing that was different because of the way a performer approached it. I mean, I think it's just a million little things. Hearing the vibe between Daniel and Eric Hellman, who played Horatio, that certainly informed the way we thought about their last moments. I mean, Hamlet dies with his head on Horatio's lap. And I think something about that, the way we edited that together was about the fact that by the time we got to that point, those two actors had really been in it for a while. And there was something real there.
One of the things that I loved about this version is, and we shouldn't underestimate the pleasure of following along. This is my college Shakespeare. It's 50 years old or something or more. I don't even know. And what I did was I was curious as I was listening to see, I wanted to know how much you had excised and how much you'd kept and what you chose. And that helps inform, to me, the director's thought processes about what version he wanted to communicate, because certainly that there is some of that. So my question to you is, did you have an overarching theme that you thought, or was there in your selections, in your cutting of certain speeches, was it all for the sake of the pacing of the show? You've got about like a little over 2 hours worth of tape, of recordings, done in like 6 chapters in a sense, online. But did you have an idea in your head about what you wanted to do with Hamlet? I mean, you worked at the Public Theater for 5 years. I mean, you obviously, and Jeremy, you were a critic too. So you've been on all sides of this fence.
Right.
But what was your own vision besides the idea of being in Hamlet's head?
It was going to be a big experiment. That was the vision. I had this impulse that it'd be cool to try to do Hamlet from Hamlet's point of view and hear it through his ears. And I did not know what was going to happen. And I would say that at the beginning of that process of discovery, it was just craven plot necessity. How can I pull from the 3 main versions that I consulted to get a coherent story? Because as you know, as your listeners probably know, it's not like there's one version of Hamlet. There are at least 3 that are significantly different. And so every production of Hamlet that you see someone has done some editing, and maybe someone has been extremely fastidious and you're only getting purely one of the 3, but chances are you're getting some combination of them. So that's what I did. It was a combination of the 3, and then trying to get the, plot to cohere by pulling things together. But here's what we discovered as we went through in terms of what made it into the final production and what didn't. I knew I was not going to touch a syllable of the big 5 or 6 soliloquies, depending on how you count. That's the heart of the whole piece. However, what we found, because of the naturalism of the way it's performed and the way that the settings, you feel like you're there. You hear, when he's inside, you hear the reverb off the walls. And when he's outside, you hear the birds circling and the wind in the trees. What we discovered is that the speechifying, if I may, that Shakespeare puts in this play, that you don't even think twice about when it's on stage, suddenly didn't work. There are long speeches in this that had to get cut because you just don't believe that in this realistically rendered environment that anyone would stand there talking to Hamlet for 40 lines. And so we end up making cuts. I never, ever thought we would lose some of the things that we had to lose, because if we didn't lose them, you just would check out. The audience, So it's discoveries like that. And then it's, my feeling, I know people love listening to audiobooks where you are, 6 hours on a long drive, and maybe this is my own failing, but I can't listen to a fully produced audio drama for more than like 35 minutes. My brain is done. If I've really committed to imagining it, that's as much time as I've got. So we initially thought this is a 4-episode version of Hamlet, realized it's too rich even for that. So that's why it became a 6-episode version of Hamlet. And then it's a little bit like the, TV writing discipline of, well, then you need episode breaks where it needs to feel, each episode needs to feel somehow satisfying, but also leave you wanting more when you go to the next one. So yeah, there was, look, it was like a puzzle. I said this at the beginning and it turned out to be true that, we should go into this knowing this is not like one of those projects where there's this one tricky scene that we're going to need to solve. Hamlet is comprised entirely of tricky scenes. Everything that we have to do with this play is going to be a kind of peculiar challenge. And, it was more than 2 years in the making, but,
Wow.
Very glad we got to do it.
Yeah. I would also say, I thought I was getting tired of Hamlet. We all three can relate to the fact that, a theater produces this play very often. It's always an audience favorite. And I thought, can I sustain another version? And, as I was listening, I thought, this is indeed the world's greatest play. It's so rich. I'm getting new things here that I didn't even think about. I'm listening to lines that I went, have I heard that line before? I mean, that's the joy of a project like this. It just reminds you when you tackle something fully realized. This play, it's endless. It gives endless returns.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it really is.
It's wonderful to hear. I think Shakespeare did good with this one. I think it's fair to say. And we got to use these tools. I mean, I was delighted to nerd all the way out in doing the research before I started really getting into the adaptation. And I found the work of Helen Hackett, who is a professor at University College London. And she points out in her research, she does research on the Elizabethan imagination, the way that people in Shakespeare's time were thinking about the faculty of imagination. And it was less scary than it had been a generation earlier. Well, she also points out that the giant public playhouse like the Globe was essentially a new kind of storytelling technology in the 1590s. They had only been around for 20 years. And so this device, essentially, where you get 3,000 people together and you are going to listen to someone imagine something and tell you what's happening inside their minds. This had never existed before. It changed the way that Shakespeare wrote, particularly in Hamlet. And I loved hearing that. And I actually reached out to her to tell her as much, that I think, Peter, what you're responding to is that the tools that we use can change the way we receive the stories that people are putting in front of us. And I think Shakespeare had a giant public playhouse that let him do certain things. And we have binaural microphones and the podcasting network and the headphones that render this stuff with more fidelity than has ever been possible before. It's this sense of, Hamlet is like the song we can't get out of our heads, and we just get to keep going back to it with all these new devices. The next one, I don't know, will be VR. I'm not going to do it. I'm good on Hamlet now after this, but someone will do it, and you'll feel like you're there inside Hamlet's eyes and not just his ears.
I'm curious about something that is actually not related to this project, and if you don't want to talk about this, that's okay. We can cut that. But you also the executor of the Thornton Wilder estate, right? And that was very much in my mind recently because I think it's Classic Stage Company has announced they're doing the Emporium, which not being a Wilder expert, I had not even heard of. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I was very intrigued by that. Can you kind of give us, because people pretty much, Thornton Wilder, they know two plays, well, sometimes one, and then, Skin Over Tears, but that's it.
Our Town.
And I was just like, what is that? The Emporium? What?
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit about that? Yeah.
We tend to think through the three big full-length plays he did. There's Our Town, Skin of Our Teeth, and The Matchmaker.
Oh, right,
without
of course,
which there would be no Hello Dolly.
Right.
He did a when Our Town was on Broadway, he also had an adaptation of A Doll's House that was simultaneously around. So and then to me, if you ask me, line for line, I think my favorite things of his are his one-act plays. Pullman Car Hiawatha, and The Long Christmas Dinner, and Happy Journey to Trenton and Camden. I mean, those are, and actually stay tuned, there will be more of those soon. But The Emporium is a play that he picked up when he was having his sort of embrace of existentialism after his service in the war. Wilder, amid his other distinctions, was a highly decorated intelligence officer. He came back from the war a lieutenant colonel with a Bronze Star, and had sort of absorbed existentialism. And one of the fruits of that was this play, The Emporium. And, it's a tricky play to describe because of how much he wanted to try to pack into the story of this kind of mythic department store, but he never finished it. He felt that he couldn't quite crack it. And so he put it to one side, but all the papers were there. And Kirk Lynn went and dug up the papers, and he took all the leads that Thornton Wilder left, and with incredible inspiration, finished the play. Wow. And so now we kind of have this like old new Thornton Wilder play.
So it's never been done officially.
Well, Kirk's version just had its world premiere at the Alley Theater last year, and so now it's coming into New York. So certainly his version has never been done. It's it's never been complete until now. So I'm glad that it's on your radar. I'm very excited for people to get to see it.
No, and it's funny that you mentioned the Matchmaker too, because I was like, I have never seen the Matchmaker. I don't remember it being produced in New York.
It's been a while, but you're in luck because it is at the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival right now. We are doing this interview on what I think is their opening night. So if you want to take a train ride up, you will get to see it. And I highly recommend it.
Why is it so hardly ever produced? I mean, it's such a kind of classic material. And of course, it's led to a property that so many people know. Do you think the musical has eclipsed the source material? Or?
I don't think so. I think the most banal reason is that it's big and expensive. It's a 4-act farce with a big cast, and those are just harder to do than they used to be.
I saw it at Ford's Theater about 17 or 18 years ago with Andrea Martin as
Oh my God.
Dolly. Yeah. It was a good idea. It was a little shaky. We won't go into the details, but I'm glad to hear. Is it Nance Williamson playing Dolly up at? I wonder, up at Hudson Valley. I used to go to Hudson Valley Shakespeare all the time when I was at the Times. So, and she and her husband are stalwarts there.
Right. Davis McCallum is directing it. And, he's very gifted, and I need to find a way to get back to New York while it's up so I can go up to see it.
So one final question for you, Jeremy, and it has to do with make-believe. So you've done Hamlet. You've been to the mountaintop with this idea. Do you franchise it? Are you going to try to figure out other plays where you can streamline in the sense of the psychological characteristic of one character? Could you do it with Lear? Could you do it with Iago? With Rosalind? How far and wide does this become a make-believe hallmark?
That's our thing. Yeah. We just get we'll just scrape the bottom of the barrel where it's some No,
it's like get the full collection.
Some
for only $49.95. That
marginal character in the Comedy of Errors is
exactly.
Our big 2029.
What's the name of the dog in Two Gentlemen of Verona? I can't,
No, I think so. Make believe there is this fork in the road early in the company's life. Is this going to be like a big institution like the Public or Steppenwolf, where we're doing these plays and there are programs and divisions and there's like a lobby and they're and it's not interesting to me. I think one of the virtues of audio, which is why if artistic directors are hearing my voice, why it is such a delightful sandbox to play in, is how lean it can be to make things this way. And also, parenthetically, artistic directors, if you're hearing me, SAG-AFTRA is wonderfully cooperative. They understand what it's like for small nonprofits to be making work like this. And everything has just gotten, there's still complexity to it, but I encourage everybody, try it, jump in, the water's warm. Anyway, make believe. We never know what's next. I didn't want a big company. I wanted Make Believe to be like a band where there's this group of artists. We work together a lot. When there's an idea good enough, we come together. We do our best to produce it. And then we wait for the next good idea to come along. I don't know what it is yet. I think first we're going to sleep for like 6 weeks because Hamlet is Hamlet. I will tell you, I understand why Hamlet breaks people. I know now more. I have a much clearer understanding of why Daniel Day-Lewis snapped like mid-performance, famously doing Hamlet. It is staring at the sun. You are not supposed to have Hamlet in your headphones editing for a year. Is not recommended.
It even drives spoofs of Hamlet crazy. Wasn't there like a big scandal, like a big fight in I Hate Hamlet? Do you remember that
of course.
play?
No, that was where Paul, it was Nigel, what was his name?
Oh, I can't remember his name, but like he started doing the fight scenes for real, and like there was this big brouhaha. Yeah.
He stabbed Evan Handler on stage.
Good times.
Yeah. Anyway.
Good times. Anyway. So I don't imagine that there's another Shakespeare in this company's future. I think this one was it was the story,
a one-off.
It was the technology, right? There was a very specific combination of factors that led to this one. I don't think like Lear is next. I don't know what's next. I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Well, we should just say, to Jeremy's point, that right behind him are two people in white coats ready to take him away. So this may be actually about to happen. No, Jeremy looks great. This has obviously been good for your health. It's good for theatergoers' health, certainly.
I highly recommend doing it as you walk around, as I did. Yes.
We were blessed to get to do a world premiere at the Tribeca Festival, and someone came up to me afterwards and said that she felt like she had to keep looking at her feet because she expected her shoes to be wet because in episode 1 there is this sense of
the effects are absolutely incredible.
I know what you mean.
Yes, listening to this on headphones, I mean, there's absolutely no other way to listen to this. You have to be on headphones. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
That's
not.
true.
Yes.
The listener advisory at the beginning is from our friend David Diggs, who I thought would be both like great with verse and authoritative, and telling you really do need to put headphones on right now.
Yeah, he was right. You were right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I grew up listening to like radio plays, when I was a kid on French public radio. So it's still very much something that I enjoy doing, and walking around is like a great pleasure. Listening to voices talking rather than singing. It's great. So you can listen to Make Believe on one of any number of platforms, including Spotify. That's where I listen to it. Yeah. Or you can go to makebelieve.fm/Hamlet.
Yeah, the easiest place, go to hamlet.fm. There are many, many Hamlets out there, but the way to find our Hamlet, go to hamlet.fm, and that's where you can get the correct link to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever people get their podcasts. We can point you there from hamlet.fm.
Yes.
Great. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk with you both.
Yeah, I was drawn into this version. Lots of resonant performances.
Yeah, I can't say, okay, I'm going to say it actually, but Hamlet is not my favorite play, but I was still kind of hooked to it because, again, it's a format I enjoy. And, talking about Hamlet, who doesn't like to hear about this mopey dude? Or not so mopey, perhaps. He's gravy for us.
I mean, as a result of this version, as I told Jeremy, it sort of reinvigorated me. I think maybe I've just seen this play too many times.
I think it's one of those plays where I think everybody with an interest in theater thinks they know it, or, oh yeah, I've seen it, Hamlet, been there, done that. And then you kind of come up on a production in whatever format, and you're thinking, whoa, okay, I had not thought of that. And I think some of it, for me, actually was not so much like a particular element like you had just discussed with Jeremy, but more like a kind of vibe. And I think, to me, Hamlet is the vibiest Shakespeare play. It's the moodiest. It's like, it's like the OG goth play. And it's really all about mood for me. So it's not even really so much about like characters, which that too, of course. But for me, it's like nailing that mood of the play. Of all Shakespeare plays, to me, that's the critical thing to nail. And I think that audio version really gets that because it feels so close, so physically close. Yeah, as I said earlier, it's really spooky.
Yeah, I think having Hamlet in your head in this way is very effective. So I wonder how other Shakespeares would fare that way.
It's true.
But anyway, Elizabeth, tell people about what's coming up next.
Well, we're gonna do we're gonna take a very sharp hairpin turn on our next episode. We've already lined up the guest. It's someone I think many of our listeners have seen in one medium or another. I will say no more, but it's going to be a very, very different vibe shift, again, from today. Really looking forward to it. You won't want to miss that one or any of them, really. So keep track of our shenanigans. You can check us out at marksvincentelli.substack.com. Please subscribe, because I've got to find a way to pay for my kayak trips. They don't happen all on their own.
Indeed.
Someone's gonna bring home the gravy bacon. And yeah.
Well, we're not beneath begging, so please, I can say it too. Please subscribe and follow us on social media. We have a new Instagram account.
I know, right?
At Marks and Vincentelli, which keeps you updated on our guests and our episodes.
Very easy. And follow us. I'm on Blue Sky. Peter's on Blue Sky. Peter's everywhere. Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, Instagram. Lord knows what's going to be invented next, but you'll be on it.
I have my phone at the ready. And thanks to our producer, Adam Gold. And thank you for listening. We'll be back again soon.